All right. Hey, everybody. It has been a touch and go situation here, getting ready to launch this week 10 episode. As you're noticing, if you're tuning in live on social media, no guest this week. It's going to be a rare solo episode breaking down NFL week 10 from a betting perspective. Our scheduled guest, Jason Nadell, unavailable due to a family emergency. Fortunately, appears to have been a positive development, so hope to have him back on the show soon. And in the meantime, let's cut to the chase and talk NFL Week 10 from a betting perspective. One pending prop to watch for this week, not available yet. I'm expecting it to be available closer to kickoff if this guy plays. Mike Williams, newly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, under 1.5 receptions, good to minus 125. And I'm choosing receptions instead of receiving yards because Williams is a deep ball threat and Russell Wilson, a good deep ball passer. So I wouldn't want one long reception to do this in, but I don't expect Williams to have much of a role. Hopefully he can just suit up at all for the Steelers on Sunday. And a bit more to the handicap here. I think it's going to take some time for Williams to adjust to his new team. We've seen this from Williams himself. It was on full display at the start of the season, his first with the Jets after building a nice rapport with Justin Herbert over the course of the previous 4 seasons with the Chargers. We've also seen other wide receivers take some time to acclimate to their new surroundings after some trades earlier this year. Amari Cooper did have a productive first game with Buffalo, but 2 other big names, not so much. Looking at Davante Adams with the Jets, even though that was a reunion with Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, not the best first showing for Adams in the days after that trade. And another big name receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. We saw the result this past Monday night of a little bit of time to acclimate. He was an absolute beast. Week 1 for him in Kansas City wasn't the case. So I'm optimistic that if Williams goes in this one, he's not going to be very productive if he produces anything at all. And looking at the other side, Washington adding defensive back Marshawn Lattimore. Lattimore may not guard Williams all that much, but I think his presence will really improve the Washington secondary overall, and that should further affect Williams' ability to make an immediate impact, again, should he suit up on Sunday. Now, will that prop is pending? However that shakes out, do have another bet in play for this game. Let's call Pittsburgh, Washington the game of the week for this show for Week 10, because I'm also on a side here. Washington laying 2.5 up to minus 120. Call it good up to -3 at even money. Those numbers are pretty equivalent from a value perspective. And this one was a consensus play on the Forward Progress pick show today. It was Hitman's best bet, also was released by Cleve TA earlier today. And this could be a bit of adverse selection since the number is still available, but I do think there are some key reasons that warrant considering a play on Washington here. Looking at TA's handicap, the market continues to undervalue Washington, being anchored to some preseason priors that Jayden Daniels and company have vastly exceeded up to this point and have continued to do so quite reliably. And while Pittsburgh's defense is a force, they haven't played the strongest schedule thus far, and their biggest strength, their edge rush led by TJ Watt. Well, Jayden Daniels for Washington brings a lot of mobility to the table that could neutralize what the Steelers' defense has been doing best. Hitman also adding as part of his rationale here that Washington's offense has been unsustainably poor in the red zone, so the Commanders could be due for some positive regression, which is crazy to think of considering how strong that unit has already looked in Jayden Daniels' rookie campaign. One teaser in play for you all this week as well, and that brings all eyes to the AFC West. The first leg, Kansas City -2 hosting Denver. We've got the superior team at home needing to do a little more than win outright. I have a slight bit of hesitation here with the Chiefs being on a short week. Also, Patrick Mahomes with an ankle injury. That may be magnified on the short week, but I don't think it's enough to keep the Chiefs from winning their second straight home game against an inferior opponent, playing its second straight road game in this setting. Second leg of the teaser, looking to my Chargers at home, laying 1.5 against Tennessee. As much as I am open to fading the Chargers when there are betting edges in doing so, in this case, I can't fault a teaser look in their favor. We're seeing the Chargers here as the superior team at home, needing to do a little more than win outright. And for good measure, per Adam Chernoff on this morning's episode of the Simple Handicap podcast, he noted Tennessee looking at its longest injury report of the season, which doesn't exactly bode well when you're traveling across the country off an overtime game the previous week. Now, there's one other leg that I think is going to get a lot of teaser consideration from bettors this week. I'm going to make a bit of the bull case, but also the bear case and explain why I'm not in play on Philadelphia -1 at the Cowboys. A common teaser angle that I like to use. We've got the superior team in the Eagles, asking them to do a little more than win outright against a Dallas opponent that is absolutely reeling right now from an injury perspective. No Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, a big question mark on that offense as well. And on the other side, Micah Parsons, a big question as far as what the Cowboys will be able to do defensively if Parsons can't go, or even if he does go and is limited. That said, 4 things give me hesitation when it comes to this leg. I'll rattle through them quickly here. First off, the Eagles are road favorites, and that road favorite category, suboptimal for teasers over the years, as seen by New Orleans going down to the Panthers just last week. Number 2, we're starting at 7 here rather than crossing through it. I know we've seen some soft 7.5s and some firm -7s for the Eagles. So you could argue that it's almost like getting 6.5 points for the price of 6, but all else equal, I would prefer a cleaner cross down through the 7, not something we're seeing with this point spread for Philadelphia this week. A third reason that gives me pause here, Nick Sirianni's game management. He can put a seemingly surefire win in doubt, as we saw just last week hosting the Jaguars. The potential counter to this matchup would be that Mike McCarthy could be guilty of the same exact charge. McCarthy, in fact, may be capable of outdoing Sirianni, but one more nudge that's going to keep me off this one. A.J. Brown's status. If he doesn't go, we're likely going to see more value simply taking Philadelphia, against the spread as opposed to in a teaser if you'd still want any Eagles exposure at all if we've got some uncertainty on A.J. Brown. So I'm going to set that Eagles-Cowboys game aside for the time being and look at that Chiefs-Chargers teaser. -120 or better is the price target. And for reference, I love to do this when teasing down favorites through that key number of 3, comparing it to the money line price. Right now, a Chiefs-Chargers money line parlay will probably cost you north of -160. And it is possible that one or both teams win without covering their teaser leg, in which case the money line parlay cashes and the teaser loses. But really here, we're betting on a very similar outcome. And for 40 cents less with the teaser, I think that's an edge that warrants getting in play on the Chargers and Chiefs, again, to do little more than win outright at home on Sunday. Moving on from the picks to the hops. This week, got a special one in store. Celebration Ale is back on shelves across much of the country, making it an easy decision for me to feature this week, as I'll be turning to it regularly while it's available for the rest of the year. Celebration Ale is a fresh hop IPA produced by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, operating out of Chico, California, and Mills River, North Carolina. It clocks in at 6.8% ABV. And starting with the appearance, they say you drink with your eyes first, and I struggle to imagine more iconic can art. I've got one right here. I'm going to hold it up to the screen for those of you watching this on YouTube or on Twitter or on Spotify in a video feed that Spotify provides. I just love the can art here. And I'll note that despite this beer being an IPA, where the P stands for pale, it pours an amber red, similar in appearance to the color of this can. But when we talk about the aroma and the flavor, that's where things are much more befitting of that IPA style. Classic notes of citrus and pine, balanced by a caramel malt that gives the beer its color. And overall here, Sierra Nevada calls this the winter holiday beer. No argument from me in the weeks and months to come. This was also a favorite of David Malinsky's. The beer itself is good enough for it to be a favorite of mine as well, but Dave's approval makes it that much more special. Speaking of Dave, we will now transition into the Malinsky Minute. And I think I'll go a pretty topical route this week. Try not to get too in the weeds on it. Obviously, there was an election in the U.S. yesterday. Today, more than half the country happy with the result. Tens of millions of other people across America not as happy. Either way, I hope you'll get something out of this. I've been thinking a lot today about the parable of the Chinese farmer, and I'll paraphrase it briefly for those who haven't heard it or might be in need of a quick refresher here. But the gist of the story is that there's a Chinese farmer. He has a horse that runs away, and people around him tell him they're sorry. That's so unfortunate. And his response is pretty neutral. We'll see. Then his horse returns with several others. The farmer's better off than he was before. So people tell him they're happy. This is such a fortunate development. His response, very similarly, we'll see. Shortly after this, his son rides one of the horses, falls off, and breaks his arm. People again flock to him, telling him they're so sorry. This is so unfortunate. His response, you can guess it at this point. We'll see. And then shortly after that, the military comes enlisting young men for mandatory service. The son can't go due to his broken arm, so that spares him a possible fate of getting killed in combat. People once again tell the farmer they're happy. That's so fortunate. And his response, once again, is we'll see. So, trying to bring this full circle, however you feel today about the US election result, if you feel anything strongly one way or the other, I hope you can find some value in this parable when it comes to deferring judgment. I've really come to think that accepting current reality with as much objectivity and clarity as possible is often the best way to make a positive impact on what our future reality looks like. And I like to think that Dave would agree with that notion as well. On that note, gonna go ahead and wrap up this short and sweet solo pod for week 10 in the NFL. To the audience, thank you for tuning in. I'll be back with a guest and a more robust episode next week. In the meantime, best of luck with your bets on week 10 across the NFL.